Spaceflight Simulator. A game where you know, go into space and whatnot. I don't know, man. You build stuff, as you can see that I'm clearly doing right here before you. Let me see, right here I was building just a simple launch and return rocket. First build on this game in probably about a year or two. I was trying to figure out with the heat shields, because back when I originally played, you wouldn't burn up on re-entry, so you could bring like a whole just straight up rocket into orbit and then launch it back down again. As long as you drop your parachute, you'd be fine. You didn't have to worry about the heat. So I was trying to figure out, well, how do I get my capsule back on the ground? Because with a like if you have a like a station to refuel and then launch into another planet or whatever back into orbit, like the key part is, well, how do I get it back there? You know, if you have unlimited fuel but you can't get a rocket anywhere, what's the point in having the fuel in the first place? So essentially, what I was doing here was just basically testing the new mechanics of, you know, re-entry, just all that kind of stuff. Trying to get into orbit with their new mechanics. Like before, they didn't have the angles, you know, like they wouldn't tell you where to face your rocket. You had to figure out all this stuff on your own. They didn't even have like the video tutorials, so you learned generally everything. Like getting to places like the moon and Mars and such was really difficult because there was no navigate tool or anything. Like right here, I forgot that it would start burning, so I was expecting to just kind of chill my way back into the re-entry because I had a parachute. But yeah, so get right here, all the heat shield jets, eventually landing back into the orbit. Which will go on to the actual build for the space station that I'll be working on in a minute. Which, yeah, the time acceleration. They also, back whenever I last played, you couldn't accelerate time below, I believe it was 25 kilometers, so below the Kármán line. So it was super, super, super helpful for everything in general. Whenever you can just accelerate, and it's 3 times the speed, so it takes a third the time than it would have initially. Didn't remember where to deploy my parachute, so I just decided to be on the safe side, deploy a bit early, which I guess, yes, slowed me down way too much. Made it take a lot longer, but again, the time acceleration made it take a third of the time that it would have. So, I don't know, my main problem that I've been having is trying to figure out, how do I get a heat shield on a rocket? Like, how can I land it on Earth and then fly it back up again? And what I've been thinking is use a probe instead of, I don't know, whatever that little black dude in the middle is called, the cone looking guy. Like, use like the rectangular shaped one instead of the cone shaped one. Like there on the top between those two fuel cans. And essentially put a connector on the top and then the next to the parachute, and then put the burn shield on the bottom. Oh, well, there we go. But basically, and then launching something down to connect to that has rockets on the sides, and you can pull it back up. Let me see where we're doing here. Oh, this is my satellite launch build. So actually, the satellite I see I have in the center there. It'll pop back up in a second. Let me see. Yeah, so I have the connector down by the base. You'll see right above the central rocket part. I don't know. I guess it's just a rocket. It's like the connector. It's like the white little dude with the ridges. And you'll see in a minute, it didn't function like I would try to launch off. Oh, actually, right here I'm gonna burn up, if I remember properly. So that's always nice and fun, because I don't make it into actual orbit. I run out of fuel. Yeah, see right there. So once I start to fall, I'm like, oh dang, okay, transfer, you know, Gotta get the rockets turned on properly because they're separated by those little metal steel truss looking connectors. So you gotta get an equal amount of fuel in each of them, or else once one runs out, you'll start to spin. So I was like, alright, we got, oh, well, why was that one rocket on? Start to spin even more, and it's like, alright, it's over, because I'm trying to get a station. So, yeah, it spins out, start burning up. And now nothing more than a lonely steel truss flying through the atmosphere. So there's absolutely nothing more to do at this point. It's over. I tried to recover, couldn't recover. So it was not a wasted trip, just wasted time, because I learned a lot about recovering back into orbit. And I also noticed, okay, yeah, those thrust dudes, they gotta go. I need equal fuel on every thruster. Even though I was initially planning on breaking off those two side dudes, but that center thruster doesn't have enough thrust to carry the whole rocket. So it doesn't function. So we leave this here. We have the side truss, whatever connectors removed. All good. So should perform better in the future, yeah? So then we throw a little bit extra fuel on this left side. We go ahead and try it again. Little visual bug there. So bring it back up into the atmosphere. Past the common line. Now we get right to this point, the necessary point. So we start to push out on the sides. Oh, we're running out of fuel again. But this time we came prepared, see? Because we've got the central fuel. And then it still spins out. I'm like, oh, well, I assumed that it was because gravity was pulling the fuel downwards, so it ran out on the thrusters that were pointing down last, and the ones on the top first. That's my assumption. I assume it was realism. So I transfer some of the fuel from this little dude because he's not going to need all of that to get back into Earth. He doesn't need any more than about 20 to 40% for the RCS. And I was right. It barely required anything. So, burns the RCS off. Heat shield doing his job. Note that I'm at 3 times speed here. So the controls are 3 times more sensitive. Here, I go and I try and detach the rocket from the satellite, or sorry, space station. I'm clicking it, and it's not coming off. Try to spin it out, and I'm like, oh dang, I don't have RCS, so it's gotta just be stuck in the middle there. So I return back to the build. I'm like, alright, throw some RCS down on here, put it on both sides, get the maximum amount of control, all that jazz. So we get everything kind of perfected up. Another visual bug. Transfer them over there, try and get them everywhere, maximum rotational power. But see, what I didn't realize was this connector at the bottom, right above the central gas tank, above that middle thruster. It was connected to the truss, as you'll see in a minute. So when I try and detach, it doesn't actually do anything. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. The RCS on the bottom left weren't connected. So they just fell, and, they just kind of destroyed, just a little hole broke my little fuel connector. I wanted to make sure it was still actually performing. So, I decided to kind of crash it into the ground a little bit. Did a little bit of spinning, whatever. Big deal, no big deal, sorry. So we're gonna go back to the build in just a second. I'll fix the RCS. We go back into orbit. Nice and simple. So we're back to the build. Go take a look. I'm like, oh, what caused the damage? Was it this? No. Yeah, as you saw, the truss was connected to the connector, so it's not gonna detach. So I flipped the RCS back on, connected. So we're going back up, you know, straight into orbit. By the way, this footage is in like 8 times, 10 times speed. So just kind of trying to condense the video's length minimally as possible. So it's all working good, you know. Get some extra fuel thrown up in there. I'm like, oh no, oh no, oh no. But whatever, I give up. Don't want to see myself burn up again. We'll try one more time because I had done a time warp past the point, the central point, into Earth's atmosphere. So I didn't have enough time to actually expand the ellipse of the orbit. So see there, I got back to the perfect point, added some more fuel down in, I started spinning. I'm like, whatever, nope, we're done. We're going back to the build. Adding some more fuel. That way, I hopefully don't have to worry as much about transferring fuel from the center, from the, space station itself back into the fuel for our main thrusters over here. So then I was like, hey, genius idea here. The smaller thrusters have more efficiency, don't they? So I wonder if 3 of these smaller thrusters will fit in place of the main one. And you see that 40 for one smaller one, 40 tons of thrust. One Hawk engine is 120. So 3 times 40 is 120. So those little dudes, they have an equal amount of thrust as my previous thruster, but they're decently more efficient. See, 280 ISP of efficiency for a Valiant. Meanwhile, for the Hawk, it's only 240. So I'm saving 120 ISP of fuel. I don't even know what that is, but it's a good measure because that means that it uses half the fuel. So that's nice and beautiful. Okay, actually not half, sorry, somewhere around like a quarter. I don't really know. I don't understand all this garbage. But I just know it's a good thing because it's using less fuel. So that's all good. I tried to maintain the fuel better here, adding it, from intervals, not waiting until it runs out. And then, boom, reached low Earth orbit. So now that we're in low Earth orbit, I transfer all the fuel back out of there, and I hit the connector. And I'm using the RCS. I'm like, what's wrong? It's not coming off. Well, what the heck? So I take this guy off. I'm like, oh, well, maybe his RCS is helping rockets to keep up with mine. Nope, that wasn't it. It's not coming off. I decided to do a little baseball, like, smack. It's like, what the heck? It's not working. Nothing's happening. So I was like, alright, you know what? It's got to be the connector that's the problem. I thought it was like, that it was just like lodged. So I got the RCS. I was like, alright, I'll pull myself out. It didn't work. So I was like, alright, you know what? I'm replacing the connector with one of those little steel truss dudes because I know that those always work. I was like, I'll throw a little bit more fuel in here because we functioned perfectly last time. So, might as well bring a little bit extra fuel, see if that works. So now, see, we have that connector. Actually, not the steel connector. I'm pretty sure we end up replacing it, though. Breezing into space here. We'll make it into orbit this time. I'll give you that little spoiler. I think, maybe. Okay, yeah, so we make it in orbit, clearly. I'm trying to use the smaller engines as much as I can because I know they're more efficient. Minimizing my usage of the ADS because, again, they use fuel. I remember back when they used to use electricity. Jeez, good old days. Didn't have to worry about conserving as much fuel. So, I'm trying to come off. I press the thing, and it's like, what the heck? I'm not coming out. So we're already back to the build. Again, I'm like, alright, I'm fed up. I'm tired of this. I'm throwing 2 of these little dudes here. Alright, no room for error, It's all gonna be good. This one better work. Alright. So I try to detach before launching this time. And I'm like, alright, so it looks pretty detached to me. Just saying, man. So I just had to fly up a bit, use the RCS to pull it out, and see it comes out that time. So it was some sort of problem with the connectors, no idea what. So now I'm using these little dudes, and it functions perfectly. Well, that was on purpose. I wasn't like trying to make it work that time. That was just a test run. So this time I take some fuel out of the probe in advance because I know I don't need that. So I'll burn the probe's fuel instead of the space station's fuel. So we come up around here. I create the ellipse of the orbit and transfer all the fuel back out of there because I'm not using that no more. I'm like, alright, this better work. If it doesn't work, like, I'm done. And it happens. Comes out like it's supposed to. See that? I'm like, oh, maybe I wasn't a crazy person. Maybe a part wasn't caught. Alright, I was right. So I'm like, alright, I'll bring this little dude back into orbit. Or sorry, back to Earth. So it's in 3 times speed. So I'm having a lot of trouble keeping everything straight. ICS thrusters, they're busting off, you know, because the heat shield's not protecting them. So they're gone. We're in 3 times speed. Again, as previously mentioned, there's the controls are 3 times more sensitive. So I'm trying to keep everything straight, and I don't know, the atmosphere, I guess. The heat keeps on hitting the sides. Oh, whoa, I looked away from the screen for a split second. It's gone. So it just didn't work out. So my, re-entry plan was ruined. But I got the satellite, so I was happy. Alright, fine, I got the satellite up here. All good. I'm gonna make a new video next time. I already have the footage for it. But I add some fuel tankers, and I'm working on some other modules to throw in there. Some Mars. I'm working on getting a space station around Mars for re-entry, refueling the probes, all that stuff.